Then the two people rushed into each other with great force. Each piece of cloth on both of their bodies was gradually removed, scattered on the ground. The two bodies merged into one. As strong and decisive as Mr. Kevin was, Mrs. Layla gently cooperated. It felt like they were made for each other. She never thought she could feel such sublimation, nor had she ever felt such ultimate satisfaction. Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, where we will bring you the most interesting and dramatic stories in life. It will take the audience from one surprise to another. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. In today's video, we will bring you the story Love Trap Plan through Jane's voice. Please follow along. Since winning the contract for the cooperative's shrimp farm, Mr. Kevin's family has become rich quickly, no longer struggling to make ends meet like before. After only 2 harvests, his life has turned a new page. He also has more money to take care of his children, as well as money to treat his wife's illness. But because of this shrimp farm, his entire family life has been turned upside down. His personality has changed. His family has broken up just because someone intervened, seduced him, and led him into a seductive affair. Brother, come in here. I miss you so much, I can't stand it another minute. Let's do it tonight. I'm working now. How can I be interested in doing that when I'm smelly and smelly? Let me shower and come down here tonight. I'll make it up to you. But now I want it. Please indulge me. If you don't want to, I'll get angry. You're too demanding. You served me yesterday, and now you're asking for more. If this continues, I'll probably leave early. If someone accidentally walks down here and sees you, where will they hide? I don't know. You have to please me. We're old. How much longer can we live? We have to enjoy ourselves. My wife can't do anything, and with me helping you, you're still acting like a fool. Okay, come in. After seeing his lover's demanding behaviour, Mr. Kevin had no choice but to please this old lady. He quickly threw the bag of bran on the ground and pulled Mrs. Layla straight into the fish watchtower. Just like that, the two made love to quench their thirst. The story began when he was looking for more people to help with the shrimp pond, as well as cutting grass for the fish ponds next to it. In the past, before the shrimp pond, all the livestock and farming work was done by the couple. But since his wife fell ill and could no longer help with any outside work, as well as expanding the shrimp farming, they were forced to hire help. Seeing him asking around the neighbourhood, Mrs. Layla, the village head, came to his house to ask for a job right away. She looked healthy and was a farmer's daughter, plus they knew each other, so Mr. Kevin didn't hesitate and accepted her. The work was not too hard. In the morning she helped him feed the shrimp. In the afternoon she cut grass for the fish and did some odd jobs around the pond. Mrs. Layla was a widow. She passed away almost 15 years ago. She had 2 daughters who got married, and now she lives alone. But the fact that she worked for Mr. Kevin was a bit confusing. Not that she couldn't do it, because the work wasn't complicated. It was just that everyone in the neighbourhood knew she was a picky eater, lazy. In the past, when her daughters weren't married, they would work to support them. But since they got married, she didn't do anything. Neighbours rumoured that she occasionally had affairs with rich old men in the district to get money to spend. But in fact, those were just rumours, because no one had ever caught her having an affair, nor had she ever brought a man home. People were sceptical, and it was partly true, looking at her white figure from head to toe, her hands and feet always clean, her money coming from nowhere but her clothes always neat, one fashion after another. If she didn't live in this purely agricultural village, no one would know that she was a farmer. Although she was over 50 years old, she looked very smooth. Her eyes had a bit of a dreamy, flirtatious look, and her speech was more bold than a man's. I wonder if this was why Mr. Kevin hired her. Kevin's wife is about 3 years older than him and looks much older than him. She has worked hard since childhood, and life is difficult, so sometimes the neighbours tease her and her husband that they are sisters. At that time, she was sick, dark, and skinny. Kevin was completely different. He looked a bit more charismatic or smiled charmingly. His body was muscular, and his mouth was also very active. The good thing is that despite being with his wife for so many years, he has never betrayed her, never done anything wrong to her. Hiring more people will reduce the pressure on him at work, and he can spend less time taking care of his sick wife. After receiving Mr. Kevin's consent, Mrs. Layla was very happy. I don't know if she was happy because it had been a long time since she had worked to earn money, or for some other reason. The next morning, she came early to work. Although she was lazy, she got into it very quickly, doing everything Mr. Kevin assigned her, joking while working. Sometimes Mr. Kevin even felt happy and excited. Having only worked for 2 or 3 days, the two of them seemed to be close, as if they had known each other for a long time, chatting intimately and boldly. Although they were working, Mrs. Layla always paid attention to him, showing unusual concern for Mr. Kevin, taking care of him and paying attention to this and that, her eyes showing sympathy and friendliness. Mr. Kevin didn't notice anything unusual. He just thought that she liked him, wanted to stick with the job, so she showed such an attitude, but he didn't know that Mrs. Layla wanted to bring him into her love net, wanted him to feel her attraction, to desire her. The first few days, Mrs. Layla still dressed seriously, long-sleeved work clothes, a scarf wrapped around her head. But these days, it was different. She wore thin, low-cut clothes. Every time she got close to Mr. Kevin, she rolled up her pants to her crotch, then deliberately bent down in front of him to reveal sensitive areas. This provocative behaviour could not escape Mr. Kevin's eyes. Her legs were white. Her skin was as smooth as a 20-year-old girl's, and the image of her bowing down kept hitting his eyes. So how could he avoid it? Dark thoughts. He himself was a man, a healthy man, even though he was an adult, but his bed affairs were still normal. His health was still able to satisfy, if not to say he was still full of desire, but only because his wife was sick that he couldn't solve it. Many times he tried to avoid her, but the more he avoided her, the more boldly Layla showed herself. She showed herself until Mr. Kevin could no longer stand it. Her flirtatious eyes began to show. Her words were no longer reserved, but went straight to the point. And every now and then there would be a sentence that made Mr. Kevin blush. "When you see me like this, will I ever get married again? I've been single for almost 15 years. It's so sad. I want to find someone to talk to, but it's so hard." That question also made Mr. Kevin feel awkward, but he also joked, "You're so beautiful. Who wouldn't want to marry you? In this neighbourhood, there's no one over 50 who's as beautiful as you. If you just say something, a lot of men will come running. Even I like you when I look at you, let alone anyone else." Hearing Mr. Kevin's words of encouragement, Mrs. Layla brightened up. She stood up again, wriggled her body, and continued to bend down to scoop food for the shrimp. "You flatter me. I'm old. I'm looking forward to getting married, but I don't have anyone. I just lie there hugging my pillow at night, bored to death. Is your wife feeling any better lately?" "Oh, she's still the same, not much progress. It's a terminal illness. You just have to take it 1 year at a time." "How sad. My husband is healthy, but my wife is like this. Isn't that hard for you, and a disadvantage for you?" As she spoke, she glanced flirtatiously at Mr. Kevin. Although her words were ambiguous, he understood what she was thinking. He suddenly felt a little embarrassed and said, "I'm done. Go inside and rest for a bit. I'll continue later." That defense made Mrs. Layla even more excited. With her sharp eyes, Mrs. Layla understood that Mr. Kevin had gradually fallen into her love trap. The way he talked, his attitude, his face had also changed. His eyes were greedily stealing glances and gradually becoming more obvious. That was what made Mrs. Layla attack him more boldly and boldly. After entering the hut to rest, Mrs. Layla poured Kevin some water to drink and used a towel to wipe the sweat off his face. That action made Kevin freeze for a few seconds. That gentle touch melted him. It was like a breath of fresh air blowing into his old soul. "Are you tired? You must have hurt your shoulder from carrying so much weight just now. Do you need me to massage it for you?" Mr. Kevin was so surprised by that offer. He couldn't believe that this hired woman was so reckless and bold. Only then did he dare to confirm that she was the type of person who was flirtatious, longing to be with men, and that she might have fallen in love with him. He panicked and replied, "No, no need, I'm fine. You massage my shoulders. Anyone who sees them will judge." Mrs. Layla smiled slightly in a displeased manner and sat somewhat close to him. She held her hat and waved it to them both, the wind fluttering her shirt, revealing her soft features. Although he tried to avoid eye contact, he could not control his eyes. He had to admit that Mrs. Layla was much more beautiful than his wife. Since the day he got married, he had never seen anyone so attractive. Although this woman was close to his wife's age, the difference was too great. Mrs. Layla continued to provoke Mr. Kevin with straightforward words. "So, at home, do you care about him like that?" Mr. Kevin hesitated. "No, my husband and I live together for the sake of love, not for that kind of care." "But whoever marries me must be very lucky. She's beautiful and knows how to take care of her husband. If I were your wife, I would take care of you from head to toe. You don't know how to appreciate me at all. She's strong, handsome, and thoughtful. She's truly a rare commodity." Mrs. Layla continued to ask, her voice joking. "Let me ask you tactfully, can you still indulge me in that? I'm a straightforward and humorous person. Don't laugh." Mr. Kevin suddenly blushed and said with a smile, "My wife and I have been ignoring that for a long time. Almost a year now. She is old and sick, so she doesn't think about such things." "So you gave up too? Or have you lost your ability too?" Mrs. Layla said, while looking straight into Mr. Kevin's eyes, smiling invitingly. Mr. Kevin replied eloquently because his male pride was touched. "You're too bold. I'm still healthy. That thing still works well. It's just that I haven't used it for a long time. And you're not embarrassed to talk like this, are you?" "What's there to be shy about? We're old, so what's there to be shy about? I'm just like you, I've been patient for years. The good thing is that I'm still very young and beautiful compared to your wife." After saying that, they both burst out laughing. They had never felt so close and understood each other like this, as if they were a couple of lovers discussing something delicate. Mrs. Layla laughed and said, "So do you like the way I look? If you don't mind, I'll let you try it, Mr." Kevin was stunned by her question, but inside he was seething with dark thoughts, desires, and male instincts. That sentence made his seriousness and dignity disappear. His eyes began to drift. "You're joking, you're so beautiful. How could it be my turn? And I already have a wife. I don't dare think about those things if it gets out. How can I face my wife and children?" "I'm not joking. I only ask because I like someone. Seeing you suffer like this, I also want to help you. Ever since I started working with you, I've been feeling a bit restless. It's really uncomfortable," said Mrs. Layla as she placed her hand on Mr. Kevin's leg, moving it up and down in a provocative manner. Mr. Kevin seemed to be starting to lose control of his thoughts. He started to think about the two of them making love, imagining Mrs. Layla's body underneath those clothes. He thought to himself, "This fat is right in front of the cat's mouth. If I don't take it, it's such a waste. It's rare to have a golden opportunity like this. My wife can't please me. Now I'm suddenly giving myself up. If I'm not shocked, then what chance would there be? There's no one here either. If I don't say it, no one will know. That thought began to overwhelm his upright and decent self. He was becoming exhausted, but he also felt that this was not the right time. He sat up. Let's get up and work first. We'll talk about that later. If you don't eat the rice will still be there. You keep talking so loudly, one day you'll be done for with me. Mrs. Layla was happy to hear Mr. Kevin say that. Knowing that Mr. Kevin had agreed, she just smiled and said nothing more. Then the two of them got back to work. While working, she teased him. Her naughty hand kept messing with Mr. Kevin whenever she was near him. Mr. Kevin couldn't concentrate on his work. His mind was now filled with scenes of men and women. He tried to act serious, but Mrs. Layla's provocative actions made him unable to stay awake. But working until almost afternoon, Mrs. Layla whispered to herself, "So what time will you be down here in the pond tonight? You didn't come down until after dinner, until around 8 o'clock. What's going on?" Layla glared at him lovingly and leaned in close to whisper, "I came down to steal something from you. I was so bored sleeping alone at home. Today the moon is high and the wind is cool, so I came down here to talk to you to relieve my boredom." "Are you serious? You're going to be a target for trouble down here." "I don't know how to joke. I don't know who is being baited by whom. Remember to prepare yourself mentally. When the rice porridge is done, I will come down with you." Saying that, Mrs. Layla went straight to the hut to get her things and then left. Mr. Kevin still stood there dumbfounded. He still couldn't believe it was true. Why in the world was there such an easy woman? I wonder if she had some purpose, or just wanted to have sex after staying too long. He clicked his tongue to let it go, and slowly walked home, prepared dinner, and went down to the hut to do his thing. After finishing all the housework, he quickly pulled on his long-sleeved shirt and went straight down to the hut. Today, he suddenly looked much more neat. He had taken a bath and was dressed so neatly that his wife was startled. "Where did you go today that you are dressed so neatly? Aren't you going to the pond, or are you going out again? The shrimp harvest is almost over, so be careful or thieves will come in and take them all away." "Hey, lady, I'm going down to the pond to sleep. Where else?" "Why are you dressed like that when you go to the pond? When have you ever gone there this neat?" "So where do you think I'm going? You have to let me change things up a bit every now and then." Before he could finish his sentence, he had already left the house, and his wife was only surprised but did not suspect anything. Who would dare think that her husband was having an affair? At his age, even if he had a girlfriend, she wouldn't need him. Mr. Kevin was in a different mood, whistling loudly as he walked, daydreaming about all sorts of things. It had been a long time since he had been close to a woman, and this time he had the chance, so he was a little nervous. He circled around the pond and then went into the hut to lie down. Not long after, through the window he saw a figure coming towards him with a small flashlight. He also guessed it was Mrs. Layla, but when he stepped inside, it was a different image. He couldn't recognize who it was. He stammered, "Who is that? Oh my God, it's me! I'm so scared that the villagers will find out, so I have to cover up like this. If someone sees me, they'll say I'm frog hunting. If I show my face here, people will know I'm promiscuous." After saying that, Mrs. Layla laughed and took off all her clothes. As she took them off, a new image appeared. Under the dim light, Mr. Kevin was also shocked. A different person appeared, not at all like the Mrs. Layla he saw every day. The thin, sleeveless outfit made him feel surprised, not knowing what to say. The faint fragrance emanating from this old woman made him ecstatic. "Why do you look different tonight? I didn't think you were this beautiful." "You have to be different when you go out with me. You always have to be beautiful when you go out. Not only beautiful, but also fragrant. Only then will you win my heart." Mr. Kevin was stunned by that beauty. His wife had never been this sexy and smooth. Just like that, he kept swallowing his saliva, his mouth tightly shut, refusing to say another word. Seeing that, Mrs. Layla took the initiative to sit down under the bed. "What's wrong, honey? Why are you just standing there in a daze? Do I look as attractive as your wife? It would be great if your wife was even a fraction of me. And are you really going to sleep with me? I don't dare think about it. Hey, man, I'm here. I'm not hiding anything from you. I've been lonely for almost 15 years now. I've lacked the warmth of a man. So when I'm near you, I suddenly feel like I'm alive again. All my desires keep flowing back. That's why I dare to come down here to be with you. I feel so guilty I'm afraid of betraying my wife. If she finds out, she'll be sad again. Just think about it. What can she do to help you if she's like this? We're in the same situation. Let's just be close to each other to relieve stress and not think about that anymore. Where will you let me sleep tonight?" Embarrassed by Mrs. Layla's boldness, Mr. Kevin sighed. "Well, since you're already here, you can sleep here with me, but you have to go home early tomorrow morning." "I know. I'll just come back before 5 o'clock in the morning, okay? Just think of it as exercise, as, come on, focus, turn off the light for me, I can't wait any longer." There, Mr. Kevin was still absent-minded. He walked out, looked around, then closed the hut door, humbly walked towards the bed, not knowing what to do when Mrs. Layla pulled him down. "Gosh, you're so strong at work. Why are you so shy around women like a girl coming home to her husband?" "You said too much. It made me feel awkward." "I felt awkward somehow. Suddenly you came here to work with me, and now you're lying on my bed. I feel awkward." "Come on, you like to take off your horns and still act like this. Lie down here and I'll massage your back." And just like that, Mr. Kevin entered the world of paradise. It seemed like he had never been pampered like this by a woman in his entire life, and neither had his wife. He was both excited and worried. He never imagined that one day he would have such a bold affair. Mrs. Layla's face started to tense up a bit. Her voice became quiet. "Has anyone massaged your shoulders like me? Do you like it?" "I love it. Your hands are soft. I've never been with a woman as sexy as you. You're old but still very wet." "Then don't let me down tonight. If I'm not happy tonight, I'll make you pay every day." The flirting and teasing continued to be thrown out. When both of them were weak and had lost all reason, then the next thing happened. They began to blend together. All the emotions, all the long-standing suffocation were released. Mr. Kevin was passionate, enjoying the sweet taste. Mrs. Layla also completely relaxed Kevin to let him do whatever he wanted. In no time, the pile of clothes was neatly placed in the corner of the bed. At this time, only 2 people appeared before his eyes. He was absorbed in her, elegantly and rhythmically. Mrs. Layla gradually sank into that ecstasy. Her breathing was very rapid. Then the 2 people rushed into each other strongly. Mr. Kevin was as strong and decisive as Mrs. Layla was gentle and coordinated. It felt like they were born for each other. She never thought she could feel such sublimation, nor did she ever feel such ultimate satisfaction. They were both deeply immersed in love. She didn't think she was making a huge mistake, didn't think she was having an affair with a married man. At this moment, all they had left was instinct. "I never thought I would have sex with such a beautiful woman today." Somewhere, wouldn't it have been better to know sooner? What a bad guy this is. "So do you like doing this?" "I'm so lucky to have met you. I'm not like the other women you've met. I'm beautiful, sweet, and talented." Happiness was evident on both of their faces. So after many days of enduring loneliness, today Mrs. Layla was satisfied, and she officially entered into a secret love affair. Both of them were still close and enthusiastic. Mr. Kevin tried to show his ability to impress Mrs. Layla. He wanted Mrs. Layla to be indispensable to him for the rest of her life. "Are you satisfied now? Is this enough to make you happy?" Mrs. Layla replied with a sigh. "I'm very satisfied, never been like this. Maybe next time I'll come back here with you." They hugged each other, showing their deep love. The harmony factor was like a string connecting two people closer together. It was true that two people with the same frequency, with high desires, didn't need to flirt for a long time. Just a few winks were enough to get them to bed like this. Mrs. Layla's ivory body made Mr. Kevin crazy. Mr. Kevin's supple figure also made Mrs. Layla infatuated. They devoted themselves to each other for a truly memorable night. While acting, Mrs. Layla encouraged her lover. "You're so strong. It's a pity that I met you sooner, isn't it good? You've left me alone for so long, I'll make you pay. I've never been so happy. Come down here with me every night, you devil. Just now you said you were afraid of this and that, but we've only just started fighting and you're already asking for more. If this continues, I'll ask to be your wife. It's true that any secret affair is interesting, and it's also the first time having an affair." Mr. Kevin seemed to have lost all support. The newness of Mrs. Layla paralysed him in all matters. The two of them were affectionate with each other. It took more than an hour before it stopped. Sweat soaked the old mat under the bed. Layla whispered, "I didn't disappoint you, did I? I'm a wonderful woman. Whoever marries me will be lucky. At this rate, I'll be addicted to you. I don't need anyone. I have you. Remember to give me your love. Don't spoil your wife or I'll get jealous. Were you and your wife this passionate in the past? It's okay to be this crazy. In this village, you're probably the only one who's crazy. Okay, come out here with me tomorrow night. So come here with me, what can I give you? Then you'll make me feel like I'm in heaven." At this point, Mrs. Layla began to show her true colours and started using her tricks. People are having such a hard time, struggling alone without any consideration. Who else would love and pamper you as much as I do? Speaking of this, Mr. Kevin also began to understand the problem. "Then what do you want me to give you? And as long as it makes me happy, I won't regret anything." After hearing that, Mrs. Layla seemed excited. She hugged him again, buried her head in his strong shoulder, and said a few flattering and sulky sentences. "I'm alone and lack a lot of things. If you can take care of me, then I'll have the mood to take care of you. Just give me a raise. You are very demanding. Okay, I won't let you down. But remember to keep this a secret. If it gets out, you won't even get the candy." Then the two of them started to caress each other again, entwining themselves with each other once more. Perhaps because it had been so long since they had acted, Kevin was so fierce today, and Layla happily accepted it, partly because her needs were high, and partly as a response to her lover's favour. The next morning, Mrs. Layla woke up at 4:30 a.m. Before leaving, she didn't forget to alert Mr. Kevin. "I'm going home. I'm not going to work today. I'll leave this afternoon. I served you well last night." Mr. Kevin woke up in a daze. He pulled up the pillow and took out 1,000 and gave it to Mrs. Layla. "I have 1,000 pocket money. When you feel better, come help me. But remember to come out here with me tonight." Mrs. Layla happily left, having fun and getting money. What could be happier? It's true that Mrs. Layla is really good at it. No wonder the villagers say that she stays home for years without working and still has money to spend. The money comes from these affairs. In the end, Mr. Kevin is just her prey. Not only that, but Mr. Kevin is also her big favourite without him knowing. Everything is not simple. There was one thing that Mr. Kevin did not know, that besides him, she was also having an affair with a young man 10 years younger than her, a gambler and alcoholic from the next village. When they came here, they slept together like husband and wife. She came to him not only because of her strong need, but also because of his shrimp pond. After returning home, Layla's boyfriend asked, "Has he taken the bait yet? If it's ripe, we'll make our move the night after tomorrow." "He's crazy about me. Now he'll listen to everything I say and do. If we're going to take action, we'll just do it now." It turned out that their main plan was Kevin's shrimp pond. Knowing that the shrimp pond was about to be harvested and was in debt, he discussed with Mrs. Layla a plan to steal Kevin's shrimp. As for Mr. Kevin, there was no doubt at all. After that time, there was almost no distance between the two people. They worked together, but their feelings were more than that of a husband and wife. Whenever they had free time, they would hug and kiss each other, ABC with each other, and confide in each other about everything under the sun. Mrs. Layla acted like a professional actress, and Mr. Kevin became like a gentle person and fell into love without realizing it. Mrs. Layla considered it a great trick to seduce Mr. Kevin. She always wanted Mr. Kevin to be completely addicted to her and Kevin, and not suspect anything about her. Besides satisfying her instinctive needs, everything was part of her plan. If she didn't steal his shrimp, she wouldn't know where to get money to pay off her debt. The day of payment was coming soon, and the creditors kept asking for money because of her gambling addiction, and she owed a huge amount of money. After a methodical plan, the boyfriend and Mrs. Layla chose tonight to act. Mrs. Layla's job was to sleep with Mr. Kevin to distract his attention in that hut, so that the boyfriend and the thieves could freely drag the net to clean out his shrimp pond. A professional historical role, and everything went according to plan. During the day, she still went to work, and at night, she dressed sexy and fragrant to please Mr. Kevin. Mr. Kevin was blinded by this relationship, so what else could he think of? Same as usual, but today Mrs. Layla was more proactive to make it easier for her accomplices to act. After the right moment, Mrs. Layla rushed to attack Mr. Kevin. This time the intimacy was much more intense than the other times. Mr. Kevin had never seen a woman so fierce. She passionately brought Mr. Kevin to paradise, causing him to lose focus. The lovemaking was so intense that Mr. Kevin opened his eyes, not paying attention to the world around him. He did not know that while he was doing it, there was a group of people outside stealing his shrimp. Today, Mrs. Layla was too demanding, but the way she acted made him crazy, so he just rushed into lovemaking. Nearly 2 hours had passed when there was a loud noise outside the pond. Mr. Kevin jumped up and ran out while still naked. He only had time to shout until his throat was hoarse when he saw the boat start its engine and leave. Now, in the pond, there was only a patch of mud and bubbles blowing up. "Thief! Thief! Village!" The shout was so loud that it attracted the attention of 2 neighbouring huts and some old men who were looking for frogs. When everyone ran over, they found out that Mr. Kevin's shrimp pond had been stolen. What was even worse was that Mr. Kevin was naked and crying while Mrs. Layla was crawling out of the hut. Then everyone knew that the two had just slept together because they were so immersed in the lovemaking that the thief came in and cleaned out the shrimp pond. Although they had taken the shrimp pond out of the pond, the plan was ruined. Grandma was humiliated under the light of the lamp when she was discovered. She quickly fled the hut, leaving Kevin devastated by the loss. The next morning, the news of the incident spread everywhere. Mrs. Layla was invited to the commune to give her statement. Finally, everything was exposed. Everyone knew that Mr. Kevin was trapped by Mrs. Layla and her lover to steal shrimp. The neighbours gossiped. The humiliation increased many times. Not only did he lose his property, he was also accused of adultery and was scolded by the whole village for being stupid. The neighbours could only sigh in dismay. They were not too surprised that Mrs. Layla often went to lure men to earn money to support herself. They were just a bit shocked when she both cheated on her love and got caught. Mrs. Layla's old lover and the bees were later arrested, and the whole group went to re-education camps. Mr. Kevin was so shocked when everything was exposed. He felt humiliated in front of his neighbours and family. His wife and children had to listen to his wife's harsh words. "You old man, you betrayed your wife and children with your eyes closed. You old man, you are crazy about women." All kinds of cruel words were given to him by his wife. He understood his mistake, so he just kept quiet. It was also a big shock to his whole family. After hearing the news, his father's health became worse and worse. His children despised him, the family lost all harmony, and the neighbours looked at him with different eyes. But in the end, everything was smooth. Time has erased everything. Mrs. Layla is safe in the re-education camp. Mr. Kevin repents, rebuilds a new life. He tries harder at work, changes himself, takes better care of his family. Then he receives the love and respect of his wife and children. That will be a great lesson for him. It is like a reminder for him to never repeat the mistake again. Ladies and gentlemen, our story will stop here. Hopefully it has brought you the most interesting and wonderful emotions. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment about your thoughts below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next interesting stories. And now Jane would like to say goodbye and see you again in the next videos. Wish you a wonderful evening.